Hello, this is Waleed Garib, and welcome back to Learn the Bible. We're on Post 102. Here we're going to look through Exodus chapter 18 and then Numbers chapter 11, the first 17 verses. And this is titled The Supreme Court. Okay, so welcome back. This is Learn the Bible, Post 102, where we're going to talk about Moses' Supreme Court. So Israel's first military victory is behind them. They've defeated the Amalekites, they had received water, they had received food, they were taken care of, and now they were camped at Mount Sinai, where they're going to receive the laws of God. Of course, they don't know this yet. So Israel has been selected as the chosen people of God to fulfill God's promises to Abraham and to his descendants. Of course, to rule a nation, you have to have laws, you have to have statutes, you have to have ways to enforce those laws. And up to this point, there were no specific rules that existed for Israel. They were just a people walking around in the desert and following a man. And of course, that man was following God. So Moses had to deal with every issue that came up between the Israelites personally. He had to go and discuss whenever someone had a dispute with their neighbor, when somebody had an argument or a fight, they had to bring it before him. And really, there just had to be a better way to rule over 1 million people. So Moses' father-in-law is Jethro. Now, of course, Jethro has different names. If you look throughout the Bible, you're going to see in some places he's called Reuel, in other places he's called Habab. But the reason that we know that names change in the Bible. We know that when somebody serves God, their names change. So we know his father's name was Raguel, and Jethro's name is also Reuel, which is probably a family name, which that actually means friend of God. El being God, right? So Reuel means friend of God. And his name, whenever he had all of his children, he had 7 daughters, right? And that Jethro means abundance or plenty. And Habab means beloved. So what generally would be expected at that time is that when somebody devotes their life to God, just like so many people in the Bible, their name gets changed. So he may have went from Jethro to Habab, which means the beloved friend of God, Habab Reuel. So whenever Moses had went to free Israel, he had talked to the burning bush, he had heard that he needs to go and free God's people from Egypt. And whenever he's on his way going, he stops at an inn, and he has his wife and his 2 sons. His wife Zipporah goes with him, and it would seem that she did not want to obey God. She did not want to circumcise her children as God had commanded Abraham. So while they're on the way, God makes it clear to Moses that he does not want him to lead his people. He doesn't want him to do anything with him if he's not going to be obedient. So God actually goes to kill Moses for disobeying and disregarding God in favor of his wife. Well, what does Zipporah do? She realizes that this is the only way to save her husband. She circumcises her son and throws it at the feet of Moses and says, "You're a bloody husband unto me." Then she apparently packs up the children and heads back to her father-in-law's house. Moses then proceeds to Egypt, and the rest is history. He releases them, but up to this point, he hasn't been reunited with his family. Well, Moses' father-in-law heard that Moses was now around Mount Sinai, and he wasn't far from Midian, so he decides he's going to bring his daughter and his grandchildren back and reunite them with Moses. So he comes to visit, brings Zipporah, brings Gershom and Eleazar, and comes to Mount Sinai and meets with Moses. Well, of course, Moses is very happy. I mean, this was a family that, of course, he missed dearly. He greeted his family and caught up on old times. He kissed his children, kissed his father-in-law. But you got to wonder, when he met with Zipporah, okay, remember, she's his estranged wife. They're not quite divorced, but she rejected him. She didn't want anything to do with him. Who is she representing in this situation? Well, we're going to find throughout the Old Testament that Zipporah is a type or a model of the nation of Israel. And Moses is a type of God to them. They were united. They were together. But ultimately, they turn away. Zipporah turns away or Israel turns away from God. But they will one day be reunited. And we'll see that in the future whenever we get to our studies about Israel in prophecy and what it means to be God's chosen people and what the Great Tribulation is all about. We'll get to that in the future. So Moses, he greets up with his family, he greets them, gets caught up on old times, and then tells them the whole story of what God's done for him and for the nation of Israel, and leading them all over the wilderness and out of Egypt and defeating all of the gods of Egypt. Well, Jethro, he's like, clearly, your God, the God that we worship, is greater than any other God in the world. Now, of course, there are no other gods, but the idea being that what people call gods. And of course, Jethro, being a priest of this God, makes an offering of thanks to God. So the following day, Moses goes and he sits down to judge the people. He's got to do his work, whether his family is there or not. So he sits down and all the people line up, probably for miles, to bring up every little issue they had. And Moses, he was the one that had the Spirit of God. So he had to decide with every different disagreement, every different problem, what is God's will in this situation? Who's right, who's wrong, and who owes who what? It literally takes him all day, from sunrise to sunset. Jethro is just kind of hanging out with him, and he's watching his son, and he's listening to the issues, like an extended view of Judge Judy. And he's like, Moses, this is crazy. You're gonna put yourself in the grave, in an early grave, trying to solve all these people's problems. You need to have a better system. So he says, why don't you get some judges, get judges that'll cover tens to dozens of people, and then get a higher court system where they're going to be over hundreds, and then a higher court system where they're thousands, and even higher with tens or hundreds of thousands, and then only the really difficult cases bring to you, and you'll be the Supreme Court. That way you don't have to worry about all these minor issues, and it's going to take a lot of the burden off of you. Moses listens. He's like, yep, that's actually doesn't sound bad. And that doesn't sound so bad from a human perspective. He chooses certain men that are God-fearing. He says, okay, here's the rules, here's the laws. He told them to the people, he told them to these judges, and he says, now I don't have to worry about all this. All these major burdens are lifted. What a great plan. But what's the problem? The problem with this great plan is that it completely excludes God. It actually seems like really good advice. But good advice that excludes God's will can get you into a lot of trouble. Moses guarantees that all the minor cases are gone. But what cases does that mean gets to him? Well, one is the completely complex cases. The one that all the other judges, despite all the rules and laws and regulations, can't figure out. And what else does it mean? Well, it means that you've put people in charge that don't have the Spirit of God. All they have is their opinion and the laws you gave them. Because Moses is the only one that has the Spirit of God at this point. And this hierarchy is going to collapse as soon as the judges are no longer effective. So Moses should have presented the problem to God. He should have said, listen, God, this man's right. My father-in-law realizes this burden that's on me, and I realize this burden, but I want your will to be done. If you want me to carry this burden, I'm willing to. But if you don't, I would like a solution, if it be your will. That's what he should have done. But instead, he went ahead and implemented his own solution. So now let's fast forward a little, and let's look at Numbers chapter 11 and see whether Moses' solution worked. Remember, the people of Israel, anytime they started to run into issues, they all ran into issues. And they all complained. That would include these judges he selected. So in Numbers chapter 11, the people start complaining in the desert once again. They want to go back to Egypt. They want to go back to their easy lives, which were not easy at all. And what happens? Well, the wrath of God, that pillar of fire that was keeping them warm at night, that pillar of cloud that was keeping them cool in the day, the fire started to devour them for their evil. And of course, they ran to Moses, oh, pray to God for us, and Moses prays and he forgives them. But then the people later on, again, including these judges, start to complain that we are so sick and tired of this food. We don't want manna anymore. We want to eat meat. And of course, Moses gets so frustrated. He is just like, he's at his wit's end. He's given so much to these people. He's prayed to God so many times. God's provided for them so many times. and they keep coming back and complaining. So Moses starts saying, I'm so tired of this. I didn't give birth to them. Why do I have to deal with them? Just kill me, God. If I have to deal with these people, I can't deal with their burden. I can't bear their burden anymore. Just kill me and let it be over. Finally, he took the problem to God. He couldn't deal with the problems of the people himself. Every time the rubber hit the road, they would come complaining and whining to God. Instead of going to Moses, instead of going to God and waiting for his provision, they would always run to Moses and complain about what they didn't have. So God now shows Moses the true Supreme Court, his Supreme Court, the way he would have it done. He says, I want you to go get 70 elders of the people. Not people you think might seem like good for the job. 70 people who have seen what I've done. Elders, people that have been there from the beginning, that know what I've done for the people. Officers, respected of the people. Bring them to me. And I don't want you to just instruct them in a law. I'm going to give them my spirit. The Spirit of God, the Spirit of understanding, of discernment. To be able to look at a situation and know what is right. Not just to look at a situation and know what the letter of the law says. So he goes and he takes these 70 people and gives them the Spirit. He says, now I want them to take over the burden of judging the people. Do you see what happened here? Those other court systems that Jethro and him had devised, they had failed. Now maybe they're still in place. Maybe this council of 70 are going to be the Supreme Court for the complicated cases. Or maybe each one's going to have a district. It doesn't really say. But the idea is, God already had a solution that would completely remove the burden from Moses. Moses would not have to worry about whether any complex issue came to him, because the same Spirit that's in him is in these 70 people. God had a solution to completely remove the burden that he had placed on himself. So the question is, what has Jesus Christ done for you? Whenever we look at ourselves, when we're honest with ourselves, we know that we have sin. We know that we tell lies, that we gossip, that we cheat, that we steal, that we hate, that we lust. You pick it. We have all kinds of problems. But Jesus Christ said, I have the solution. What do? Well, I'm going to be better. I'm going to be good. Jesus Christ is begging you, no, I have the solution. I am the solution. I want to take your burdens. Jesus Christ already solved your problem and my problem of sin. Jesus Christ already paid for it on the cross. You can try to divide, you can try to do whatever you want to do to try to justify yourself before God. But the fact is, he's already done it. It is finished. He paid for it on the cross. So be careful not to try to come up with a better solution for your sin. Now, if we want to take this on to even other issues, real problems in our lives, our finances, our children, our houses, our neighborhoods, our schools, our safety, stop trying to come up with solutions that are the best you can come up with. Instead, bring the problem to God. I can guarantee you that God's solution is always better, will always be better than anything you might come up with. No matter what you could come up with, God will improve upon it or replace it with something 1,000 times better. Moses did the best he could with Jethro's advice, but it didn't solve his problem. It actually led him to greater despair. And he just wanted to die because of his misery of dealing with these people's problems. But finally, he brought it to God, and the issue was solved. And God can solve your issue today. Accept him as Savior, and when you become his child, go to your Father. Go to your Father and say, God, here's my problem. And I don't know what to do. And just watch. Watch what he does. Now, don't say, here's my problem, and then turn around and try to solve it yourself. Say, here's my problem. Help me to know how to solve it. And he will either solve it for you or teach you how to solve it. But you got to trust in him. There is no trust if you go try to do it your own way after discussing it with him. God bless you. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us on Learn the Bible.